What is up, Squarespace gang? Today I wanted to show you how do we turn a button style like this is just our tertiary button style, into one like this. So today I'm gonna go over how to install this code, how to change some things, and then if you care, I'll walk through what this code is and how it kind of works, sort of an example of it over on CodePen, but not necessary to get it working on your website. So let's jump into it. All right, so let's add this to our website. So here I am in the editor mode. Here is a button that I've added with a tertiary button. Over in the design tab, this is a tertiary button. So let's just hit done save. Now let's add that CSS, go over to my website, copy the code on our Mariner's button style page, copy the code down there, and go to our custom CSS and just paste it in there. And then it will automatically transform it into this. Now, if you want to change any of the styles, change them up here. Anything that starts with a dash dash, these are the ones you can change. Our button size, this is sort of the height of it. You can change it to 150 to make it a little bit taller. That would work. The arrow size is how big the arrow is when it's there. So you could change that to maybe like 80 to even make it smaller. There's a much smaller, tiny little arrow. But I'm gonna leave that at 100. I found 120, 100 is pretty much what I like. 3, that's sort of the transition speed in between. Offset, how far away it is from the text. 27 is a little bit further away than -17. And then thickness, that's just how thick the line is. Let's change that to 2. There's a little bit of a thinner line. And then of course the color, change this, use whatever color value you want. So this is a beautiful style that I found. I saw this on Mariner's Church website, which is a church out in Orange County. I've been there before. It's a great church and they have a beautiful website. And I saw this right here, this little element on their homepage that is just super cool. And so I tried to recreate this and I think I got pretty close. So that is how you install this on the website if you just want to install it and use it. If you care to sort of understand how I built this and the code that goes behind it so you can make customizations of your own, stick with me. I'll show you the code that I have over on a CodePen over here. And I'll just break it all down and just tell you what I did to get there and how it works. So hang tight if you want to, otherwise enjoy the button style. All right, thanks for hanging with me, my fellow CSS nerds. If you want to learn a little bit more about how I built this, that's what I'm going to go over right now. I'm just going to talk about all this CSS code right here. So in order to do that, let's just delete it all. Now this original code right here is just positioning this. This is Squarespace irrelevant. I'm just giving some basic styles to the background, setting a background color and using display grid to center our items. Place center just puts it right in the middle. So there we go. This is our little button right here. So let's start with just some basic styles. What I want to do when I was looking over here, what this looks like as we're transitioning this is we have a line right here that turns into the angle. Well, actually, what we can use is 2 pseudo selectors, so we can stack them right on top of each other. So we have a line that's about 50% high here and a line that's about 50% high here. And then we transition as we hover to just move them. So just change the rotation of those lines. So that's what I'm gonna do. I need to create 2 different elements, stack them, and then as I hover, change the rotation. So that's what I'm going to do as I build these out. So I'm going to use our after and before pseudo selectors because this allows you to put elements in there. And only up to 2 because you can only use the after and before, but that's perfect for what we need. So content. Whenever you're adding a pseudo selector, you have to add this content property. So after, let's just say, hello, you can see where it is. It's just going to position it right after. We're targeting our A. And it's just going to position it like right here, right after all the content. And same thing as before. If I did, so we have our after A : before, it would put hello before is there. So this would be before all the content. That's what these after and before pseudo selectors do. Pretty cool. But we don't want it to say hello, obviously. So I'm just going to make it blank. And then we're just going to say, let's say, we want each one of these lines, we want it to be height to be 50% as tall as it actually is, as tall as this element is, because they're going to be stacked. we're going to say width, maybe 2 pixels, and background white. And let's also target, let's start styling our anchor element as well. So color white, we just want the color of that to be white. So nothing is happening here, and maybe that's because we're not giving it a display block and then position absolute. So now we're positioning both of these. Woo! And so now it is going all the way down. So this is happening. We're going all the way down because we've positioned it absolutely, and we've said give it a height of 50%. Absolutely positioned items, they position themselves relative to the nearest positioned element. And right now, our anchor link has no position property. So this can't be the nearest position element. So it's jumping all the way back up to our body. And that's why the height of this is 50% of our body. However, if we position by just saying position relative, if we just do this, now our before and after pseudo selectors will position themselves relative to their anchor link because this is the nearest positioned element. So there we go. Now we want to move these over to, let's just say, top 0 position, these there and right 0. So on the right side. So right there, they're positioned right there. But that is not really where we want it. We kind of want it right -17 pixels. Okay, that's about right. But it's not going full height. That's because both are positioned right at the top to be 50%. So I'm going to come over here. I'm just going to grab our after one. I like putting these in their order within the HTML. So I'm going to say before comes first and then after comes after. So I'm going to order that like that. After, now we're going to say bottom 0 and top. Let's just do that. I'll just show you that. So if we do bottom 0, nothing changes. It's not positioning to the bottom because we have two conflicting CSS properties. We have top and bottom. When you are, and so the CSS doesn't know. Do you want to position it to the top 50% or do you want to position it to the bottom 50%? When you have both of these properties, CSS defaults to taking the top. So what I want to do is unset the top property. And you'll see, there we go. So now it's this bottom one is working for our after pseudo selector. So we have our top and our bottom. So let's just do this as well, just so we can see background red, background blue. So you can see we have these two. Well, let's just stick that as white because that's easy enough to see. So we have, and maybe let's make our font size. Let's make it 2 rem, maybe a bit larger. Okay, so we have our bottom and our top. So this is looking pretty good. We're kind of getting there. And now generally what we want to do is as we target our anchor link, as we hover over our anchor right here, we're going to do hover. We want to change our after pseudo selector. And we also want to do that after. We also want to do that with our before as well. But we'll come back to that. Let's see what we want to do. So we want to rotate them, right? So I need to rotate. I need to transform and use the rotate value within transform to transform it. So I'm going to go transform. This is our after, so this is our bottom one. We want this to sort of rotate up. So I'm going to say rotate, let's say -45 degrees. Let's just see what happens. Okay, so maybe positive 45 degrees. Yeah, so that's kind of what we want generally. We're kind of getting there. Now let's do that with the before pseudo selector as well. Before, maybe this one's negative. Is that right? There we go. Okay, so you're kind of getting the idea of how this works. We want to change the transform origin. The default, so we have this line right here. So we have this white line, and the default, it's going to transform it as we rotate it directly in the middle of it, so the middle axis. But what we actually want to happen is the transform to happen right at the bottom there. For our top one, and at the top right for our bottom one. So I'm going to change the transform origin of both of these properties. I'm going to target just our before. We'll say transform dash origin. we'll say this is our before, so it's our white one at the bottom right, because the bottom right is what we want it to the axis in which we want it to rotate on. We don't want it to rotate from the middle. We want it just to rotate on the axis. So that's what I'm changing our transform origin here. And then our after is going to be top right. There we go. So now that's looking a bit better. Do you kind of understand what that's going? We're changing the axis in which this rotate happens. Instead of the middle, it's the bottom for the top and the top for the bottom. Okay, so let's see what else. We might want to move this over. So let's use a rem value here, because that might be a little bit more. 1.75 rem. That's probably a little more appropriate to the font size. It's relative to the font size. So what we need now, let's make this happen a little bit more smoothly. And I think you understand that these two are different. So I'm going to get rid of this background red right there. Let's make this happen a bit more smoothly. I'm going to say transition. We're going to transition our transform property over 0.3 seconds and give it an ease transition function. Ooh. Very nice. Okay, so now what I want to do, it looks like one thing I saw over here, notice how we have some curved borders. They're flat borders here, but curved as we're hovering. So, let's do that over here. So as we're hovering over, as we hover, let's change the border radius to sort of the width of it, so 2 pixels. I'm going to change the border radius of this to 2 pixels. Dun, dun, dun. So that looks a bit better. We still have it, there's kind of like a nub in there, but I think that's all right. I don't think that's going to hurt us. All right, and last thing we want to do, it looks like over here on the Mariners website, the line, the arrow gets a bit smaller than what the 2 lines are. So it's like the height of each one of the lines, the before and after lines, it adjusts a little bit. So let's do that in the code. So this is going to be a little bit more complex because we're going to be using some custom properties, some variables, and then using a calc function to determine where the position of elements should be. So let's just sort of talk about what's happening. So right here is our height. What we want to change is on our befores, maybe we want the heights of these lines to be 30% high, and that would create a smaller arrow, right? But it's not positioned well because still each one of those lines, it's positioned to the top and the bottom, so it's just 30% there. So they're just not reaching each other. We need to position them so they're always meeting right here in the middle instead of attached to the top and bottoms, which is what these are. So we need to change this top and this bottom property to dynamically change depending on the height that we've given it. So the first thing I want to do is create some variables that we can mess around with. So we're going to call this the line height, which is going to be 50% as it's a line, right? 50%, and then arrow height, which is going to be 30% down here. So let's just add those 2 custom properties in. So instead of height, I'm going to see var line height. So now we're pulling in this variable within there, right? And then down here, let's do the same thing, var arrow height. So nothing has changed except we can now play around with these variables up here instead of having to change them in the code all the time. Next thing we need to do is change where we're positioning the elements. So we want our top line right here to be positioned at the 50%. Right now it's positioned at the top, but we sort of want the bottom of it to be 50%. So if our line height is 50% high, then the top is still going to be 50%. But what if our line height is 30% high? Well, our top, it's still positioned at the top. So we want this top position to be a function. It's calc 50% minus our var line height. So this means half of it will always position itself at the bottom half. So 50% minus our line height is 20%. So now it's positioned 20% high. And we want to do the same thing at the bottom. So I'm going to copy that and do the bottom down there. So now that's positioned right in the middle. However, both of these values are the same. If I change this back to 50%, we still have that issue. So we need to change the top and bottom positions as well on our before and after pseudo selectors when they're hovered. And just change out top on our before, right? But instead of our line height, change that to arrow height. And then top here, change this to arrow height, and this should be bottom, not top. So there we go. So now we are able to adjust the height of the line and the arrow independently. We probably want that as like 40%. That looks a little bit better. And then everything else, we can kind of add some other custom properties into, like line color. Maybe we want that to be, let's look in our assets here. And let's go to our color, and let's just grab maybe this blue color looks kind of nice, right? So I'll just target that, paste that in there. And now let's use our line color property to change the background, our custom property right there. So now that's a nice little line color. It's a little hard to see, but that works. And we can do the same thing with our, we can do the same thing with our line width. We'll just call this width. How about 2 pixels? We'll say 3 pixels so we can see the change. Width right here, var width. And that gets a little bit thicker. Okay, so there we go. This is generally how you build. I build stuff out, play around with it in here, and then once I've gotten this working, then I will put this into Squarespace and adjust these selectors to be targeting the specific elements that I want within Squarespace. So I hope this video helps. I hope you found it informative. Let me know if you have any other questions about this or the plugin, that sort of the copy and paste code from my website. But hope you enjoy and have a fantastic day.